Blessing thing. Good morning, beautiful people. And the rest of y'all too. Just kidding. I'll just make sure you're out there. So nice to see all the beautiful faces here on this beautiful January morning. Give thanks to the ancestors on whose shoulders I stand, and I also honor all that you hold sacred and holy for you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, to be fully here with you. As some of you know, I love history, and this morning would like to share a little bit of UU history, which I found fascinating from the beginning and still to until this day. And a little bit about, because I've got my minister suit on today. Fancy, I know, I'm doing my best to channel one William Ellery Channing. In fact, my favorite UU historian is one David Robertson. He wrote the classic, The Unitarian Universalist, and published, I think, in '85. I like to quote Robertson, and he says, and I quote, that Channing is the single most important figure in the history of American Universalism. Emphasis for me, share with you this one, is the word American. And I love tracing the history of UU. This is the American version. We go back to England, Transylvania, and all the way back to all the names, but all the way back to origin and to Africa and a country called Egypt. But that's a story for another day. So he provided the movement with intellectual leadership. Our theme for this month. Intellectual leadership of rare quality at the moment of our movement inception. Just when Unitarians were just beginning to see themselves as more than the liberal wing of New England Congregationalism. So it was at that time, in 1828 specifically, at a sermon he called The Likeness of God. The Likeness of God. I don't want to say God too loud. But he called it The Likeness of God. And I found his sermon to be profound and very applicable even to today. And so see if you concur, and or not. But I believe this sermon could be delivered in many UU congregations today. He said, and I quote, he said, God is another name for human intelligence. How about that? God is another name for human intelligence, raised above all error and imperfection, and extended to all possible truth. Then he asked the question, so from whence do we derive our knowledge of the attributes and this perfection which constitute the Supreme Being? Where do you get that stuff from? Where do we get these attributes from? Channing says, we derive them from our own souls. We derive them from our own souls. The divine attributes are first developed within ourselves, and thence transferred to our Creator, or whatever idea we have of God. Sublime and awful as it is the idea of our own spiritual nature, purified, and enlarged to infinity. End of quote. Old white man has some pretty good stuff on his mind, I think. To me, this is self-development on steroids, reminding us all that we have that spark of divinity and challenges us to bring it out of the dark. That the universe is not only out there, but also in here. Another quote from Channing about the soul. The soul, by its sense of right or its perception of moral distinction, is clothed with the sovereignty over itself. And through this alone, our soul understands. Our soul understands and recognizes the sovereignty of the universe. End of quote. Now, you know, when I read Channing, I tense up a little bit because he's paternalistic, ain't no doubt about it. But I cut him a little slack. I get over it, because he says things like this, and I quote, "I do and I must reverence human nature, neither the sneers of a worldly skepticism," which I find so prevalent in my world today in my judgment, "but I do and I must reference human nature, neither the sneers of worldly skepticism, nor the groans of a gloomy theology. None of that will disturb my faith in the godlike power and tendency. I know how it is despised. I know how it has been oppressed. I know how civil and religious establishments have for ages conspired to crush it. I know its history. I shut my eyes on none of its weaknesses and none of its crimes. I understand the proof by which despotism demonstrates that man is but a wild beast." I'm not going to say women too. I'm going to leave y'all out of it. See, y'all want to be inclusive sometime, not some other time. I see, gotcha. Man is a wild beast in want of a master and only safe in chains. But injured, trampled, scorned as our human nature is, I still turn to it with intense sympathy and strong hope. End of quote. With intense sympathy and strong hope. Y'all, we all we have. We what we got. We stuck with each other. So I simply love his writing, the way he engages. And of course, he tapped me on my shoulder, and he has some direct advice for all you would-be ministers and religious practitioners. Direct advice for leadership, which I find so applicable to today's UU demands and our concerns. He says, I ain't going to say this, he said that. He said, "Let our theology rise above the technical, beyond the obscure and frigid theology which has come down to us from an age of ignorance, superstition, and slavery." And slavery. No, these are my quotes. Everything I've said is in quotes. "Let it penetrate the human soul and reveal it to itself. No preaching," see, he didn't do that either. "No preaching, I believe, is so intelligible as that which is true to human nature." None. No preaching, I believe, is so intelligible as that which is true to human nature and helps men, and women, read, and people read to their own spirits. End of quote. So reading Channing reminds me to pull my light out of my pocket and remind us about the spark that is burning within each person in each seat in this beautiful, awesome sanctuary, which I might point out this month, it warmed my heart. It was such a beautiful surprise to walk in and see the African American art that is covering the walls, and that this congregation has been doing that for years now with local diverse artistic organization. So I want to give a shout out to UUCP. So, Channing calls that light, by the way, a might within which can more balance all the might that you think is out there, all that power that you think we think. So I don't want you to think I'm not included in this analysis. So in thinking about leadership, I went to Webster, I looked it up and got the definition. Of course, I'm being a good schoolboy. But it's, he says it means to be in charge of something, to be in charge of, and I believe when I read it that it kind of starts with me, starts with the self. But it's the action of leading a group of people or organization. That leader is responsible for attaining results, usually with other people, in a joint effort to accomplish a goal. So I was pretty close. I believe, again, that leadership to accomplish that goal begins, I should say, at home. But leadership is not a kayak. A leadership is not a kayak. It takes a full crew if we're going to keep this ship afloat and heading to the farther shore. Now, I get the vision of a soul kayaker. That's when I say kayak, I mean that little one-person one. And I know the solitude and the power of that alone is a powerful thing. Fog breaking, just you out there on the ocean or the river. There's a place for solitude. Of that, I have no doubt. However, leadership implies we debark from our kayak and contribute to the navigation of the self as well as other folk. Famous guy, I always get his name right, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said the following, quote, if you want to build a ship, don't get a bunch of men, tell them to go cut some wood, get some tar, get some sails, and build this ship. No! Teach them of the vastness of the sea. That's how you build the ship. That's how you build the ship. So upon our reflection within our Unitarian Universalist congregational context, I resonate fully with the concept of what we call congregational polity. Leadership begins with us. If you're sitting in a seat, you're a leader. There is no pope, no bishop. I said earlier today, Margaret is not going to get a phone call telling her that she's got to get out of Dodge and head up to Philly tomorrow because the pope had an idea, or the bishop has a wish. No, it's my limited understanding and my limited time in UU circles that y'all make the call. That is congregational polity. The leadership is with the people. Sorry, I'm having trouble. Perfect. That's my good buddy, too, over there. Oh, thank you, dear. Everybody is a leader. So that I'm a little perplexed then as I continue my little jaunt down UU lane, why the word leadership seems to conjure up such a runaway. I don't want that. I'm saying you are that. So I was talking with my co-staff person, Janine, and she shared a reading with me, a story about the word volunteer, that perhaps it has a lot to do with that word, and maybe we need to find another word. And we trying out the word serve or service, being of service. And I want all would-be leaders to know that you are not alone. It's impossible to be alone if you've gotten the message about UU congregations. Because we are leaders by what? Tradition and declaration. I'm always amazed by the couple of 100,000 UUs in this great country, and 800,000, but 800,000 in the whole world. Got 2 billion Catholic and Christians, got 1.8 billion Muslims, hundreds of millions of Buddhists, and 18 million of those who follow Judaism. And then you got them little knuckleheads from New England, and all the folks from all the other tributaries of traditions that have joined this movement. And it tickles my heart, and I get as pink as I get. Yeah. So I challenge you to really get to know your fellow shipmates. That's where the leadership lies. That's where the vastness of the sea is all about. That's how you keep the ship afloat. People with a dream, talking with folks, listening to their stories, and listening in a meaningful way. I think it may lead to alliances and agreements to live into our faith together as leaders. So what's at risk? What's at risk? In our men's work, when we do men's initiation, that's one of the hard questions we ask men. What's at risk for you to show some? We all got stuff at risk. So what's at risk? For us to claim that. What's the payoff? I offer the payoff for you to consider the payoff. It's the same payoff you got when you made that anonymous donation that time. Or sometimes your grandchild smiles at you for no reason. It falls from that same place beyond explanation. It speaks to your bigger and your better self, wherever it's hiding out at. It's funny, I don't know who wrote this. I call her sometimes the great script writer in the sky. So you're saying in order for me to receive something, I got to give something. Now, who wrote that script? I don't know, but I offer that's the way it goes. There's another Frenchman who pops in my head. This guy, he used to walk around. Whenever I see him in the history books, he always has his hand in his coat. Speaking of leadership, so I'm going to leave you with this guy here. Who I'm talking about? Thank you. All right. You know what Napoleon said about a leader? Napoleon said a leader is a dealer. What comes up in your head when I say dealer? A leader is a dealer in hope. Napoleon said that. A leader is a dealer in hope. A leader doesn't ask the men to build that ship and get some nails and some tar and some. Have you ever seen the sea? Would you ever like to see a wave larger than anything you could ever imagine? Or the whales at 4 o'clock in the morning, the mist coming from their, wherever they come from. The vastness of the sea. So, being an old card shark from my granddaddy and daddy on down the line, that's what pops in my head, a dealer. One of them guys or gals or persons. So this morning I'm offering that I'm going to shuffle the deck, put it out there, and I'm going to ask Avery to cut them, as we say. And they lift it up, and I put the cards back in my hand. So here's the deal. You are the dealer. You are the dealer. And if you're a member of this congregation, consider serving. We can use you. We can need you. So we are dealers in hope. We all are leaders, dealers in hope. So let us play and let the games begin. Ashe, amen. Blessed be.
and Anthony.